In this video, we're going to be going over field exercises that hockey players can use to improve their change of direction on the ice. Alright guys, it's Kyle from Relentless Hockey, and today we're going to be going over field exercises that hockey players can use to improve their change of direction. So before we get too deep into this, it's important to understand that while hockey players are always obsessed with how do we get quicker, how do we get more agile, there's a difference between agility and change of direction. So agility has some sort of cognitive element to it. It's how we see something and then respond as fast as we can, or see a play and make a quick cut or something like that. Change of direction, we're only focusing on the physical element of agility. So it's how do we control our body? How do we position ourselves to rapidly decelerate and accelerate right away? These are facets we're going to be going over today and how we improve our change of direction and finding the best body positions to get rapid and explosive in that change of direction. So let's jump in. Alright, so before we get into these drills, it's important to realize that there's 3 phases in any change of direction. Our first one is the deceleration phase, or the braking phase. It's how do we take our top end speed and all of a sudden rapidly stop to then be able to change directions. Our second phase is what we do when we stop, and that's the transition phase. So we need to find a position that we're in a good body position to be able to translate that power into something else. Our third phase is the rapid acceleration phase. It's how do we get as fast as we can right away and get going from that body position into rapid speed. So we're going to be challenging all 3 of these facets in these drills and really focusing on how do we translate each one of those phases on the ice. So our first drill here, we're going to be focusing on just 2 different elements here. Our first one is our acceleration, so how fast are we getting off the line, and then our deceleration at the end of that line. So we're going to just use about 5 yards here, and we're just going to be starting out as fast as I can into a full sprint, and then a rapid deceleration, and how fast can I stop that sprint to be in a position to be able to translate that somewhere else. So it's important to be finishing in that position where all of a sudden you could go for another sprint or change directions or be in some sort of body position so that you can get moving fairly rapidly. Alright, transitioning to drill number 2. This time we're going to be in a shuffle, but this time we're going to be focusing a little bit more on our transition phases. For this drill, we've set up 2 different cones about 5 yards apart. We're going to be shuffling as fast as we can, and then when we're ready to change direction, we're hitting the brakes, we're getting in that braking phase, and finding a body position where we can translate that speed elsewhere. We've got a 2-second pause, 1, 2, and then we're translating that speed and that power into the other direction, again, right into our shuffles. You're going to repeat that about 4 or 5 times per side, really focusing on your transition position and then trying to get out of that as quickly as possible. Alright, exercise number 3. We're going to use that exact same format we just used, but this time we're going to eliminate that pause, eliminate that transition phase, because you should have been able to find a position that now you can accelerate rapidly. So we're still in that low shuffle position, but this time we're eliminating that pause when we're finding our transition. So we're going as fast as we can in our shuffle. We're not going to be pausing this time. All we're going to be doing is taking that transition position and then shuffling rapidly away from that position as fast as we can the other way. You'll repeat this about 4 or 5 times per side, take a break, and then repeat this whole exercise again, really focusing on getting faster and faster every time. Alright, so exercise number 4, we're going to still be using that shuffle position, but this time, as we're getting in our transition position, we're going to be nice and low, and then we're going to have a crossover out. So it's important here to find a transition position that we're nice and low, and that we can really get some power out of that crossover position. Just like on ice, we're going to be trying to use the crossover position to really generate that under push so that we can then get going with a rapid acceleration right away. We're going to repeat this around, again, 4 or 5 times per side and really focusing on trying to get faster and faster every single round. Exercise number 5, we're going to take that crossover position that we just worked on, and instead of going right into a shuffle, we're going to translate it into something that we're a little bit more on-ice specific. So we're actually going to be starting this with a little bit of a jog towards our cone. Once we hit that end of the cone, we're going to have that transition period where we're nice and low, and now we're using that crossover to hit that cross, and then a jump, and a land. So we're just focusing on 2 powerful movements right away from that transition position. We're focusing on that crossover push right underneath of us to get going as fast as we can, and then we're focusing on our next push, which we're actually going to use as a jump. From that jump, we're going to just have a nice landing, so we're nice and controlled, and then we're just going to start a jog again, going back the other way. Again, we're going to hit this about 4 or 5 times, really focusing on that powerful cross and that jump. Those are our real keys to this exercise. All right, exercise number 6. We're gonna be focusing again on that transition, but now we're gonna start to get a little bit more hockey specific, or at least a little bit more athletic specific. So again, we're gonna start out in a sprint instead of a jog like last time. We're gonna be in a full sprint. As soon as we hit our cone, we're gonna stop as fast as we can and get that crossover start going as fast as we can the other way. So we're focusing on trying to generate as much power in that acceleration phase, and then once we get to our cone, we're hitting the brakes as fast as we can and having that explosive crossover back the other way. We're gonna repeat this around 4 or 5 times, but we're really only focusing on that rapid, powerful, explosive acceleration going the other way. All right, so exercise number 7 is adding another layer of complexity on these drills. So instead of having just a stop and go or a stop and crossover and go, this time we're actually gonna get into something we see on the ice known as the Mohawk pivot. So this kind of transition is a lot more complex than just a stop and go. This time we're actually gonna have to really focus on the transition or the plant phase so that we can now open up our hips and then get going. So again, a lot of the same concepts. We're focusing on that rapid braking phase, but this time we're just gonna focus on a single plant, open hip, and then focusing on our next push to really accelerate out of this position. So instead of starting out in a full sprint, this time we're just gonna start out with a jog, really focusing on when we have that decel and then finding that body position and that plant position so that we can open up those hips and get going as fast as we can the other way. So we're gonna hit this about 5 or 6 times and then change directions so that we're opening up our hips in both directions. All right, our final exercise of the day is super useful for defensemen. Instead of having a forward to forward or a side to side transition, this time we're gonna be focusing on our change of direction from forwards to backwards. So from a forward acceleration, now we're gonna have to rapidly decelerate in that braking phase and then find a transition position that we can translate our power to be going backwards this time. So we're gonna have to actually have a really strong plant in our left foot or our right foot, depending on what way we're transitioning, and then be going backwards as rapidly as we can. So focusing on staying nice and low in our transition, we're gonna have to really focus this time on our plant position, what that leg's doing as we translate that power going forward into power going backwards now. So we're gonna do this about 5 or 6 times per side, really focusing on just that forward to backwards transition. The rest isn't super important, but we really just wanna start practicing that deceleration and backwards acceleration right away. All right, so those are some awesome change of direction exercises that hockey players can be doing at any time, whether it's out here on a field or after practice at a rink. Wherever you can find some space, you can be practicing your change of direction. So again, we really want to focus on those 3 different phases anytime we're doing any sort of change of direction on the ice or on the field. We want to be able to find that rapid deceleration and then really focusing, and this is where we want to put the emphasis on today, is that transition position. So where do we find a position that we can then translate some power elsewhere, whether it's forwards or side or backwards? We're really focusing on our positions here. So if you're enjoying this kind of stuff, you want to see more content on speed, power, agility, check out our YouTube channel or on Instagram at Relentless Hockey. Until next time, guys.